This is all stuff that won't fit in a regular bookshelf. I've built them a certain size and these are oversized. And
Yeah.
so I was pulling stuff off of there and it was like stuff that Bob Pike had from the 80s. It was like Training Magazine's top 10 best articles from 1987 or whatever. One of these days I really have to read those.
Well, and I when you do go back and look, it's still so relevant. We're still talking about some of the same things that we were
Yeah.
talking about in the 90s and late 80s. Like it's some of the same hurdles we're still trying to get over.
I was talking once with Bob, and welcome, by the way, to Lessons for Learning Leaders. We're sitting here chatting about books and stuff. Katrina Kennedy making her second appearance on the podcast. Thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me again.
I was talking with Bob one time, and I noticed something that Sadiq Love had put out. It was a system that he'd put out, and this is not a slight on Sadiq. I don't want you to think that. But I was also looking at some stuff that ATD had put out and reading something that Elaine Beek had put out, and I'm looking at all this going, it's all kind of the same thing. And I said to Bob, does this look like the same thing to you? And he just looked at me and said, Dwayne, there's nothing new under the sun. And I'm like, okay, all right. I
Yes.
guess I'll just keep reading everything I can and go from there. So,
Yep,
um,
absolutely, absolutely. Like, I think, you get five different people's ideas that are very similar, but then one of them resonates with you. And that
mhm.
moment you grab it and you move forward. And I think I keep noticing, things are cyclical. And for you and I who are a little more seasoned, we've been around a while, you start to see things coming back, start to see things that like people are grabbing onto again. And then, it's going to pass. It's just a kind of a wild world we live in.
I await the return of the overhead projector. Because honestly, some of the stuff I got from Bob before he died, I'm looking through files and I'm like, why did you keep all these overhead overlays? Why do you still have these? Well, I
Because they were
may.
expensive, right? Like they were gold. You had to keep them.
Yeah.
Um, and it could come back. It could come back. There's a group of people buying iPods again,
Yes,
listening to
saw
their
that.
music outside of their phones. So
Yeah, but
there's hope for the overhead.
it's a lot like when I mentioned earlier before the podcast that I'm getting ready to move. And in part of all this, I had to clean out. Well, I say I had to. My wife did the bulk of it. Let's be honest. Because I was working, traveling, and she was taking care of it. But I cleaned out my dad's wood shop. And it reminds me of the same thing because I'd pick up a coffee can and be like, why do you have all of these random bolts in this? I don't even know what to do with this, Dad. And it's a lot like I'm looking at Bob's stuff going, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this. But there's a part of you that's like, hey, they thought it was important. You better hang on to that.
Right. Right. And I don't know. I am of a certain age and grew up in a house where, you kept things because they might be useful. Didn't want to have to spend the money again. Um, so so I've got my can of bolts.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time again. As you can see, the office is in a state of disarray. We are moving to Iowa, but I wanted to get on with Katrina before we got too far into it and had everything here packed up. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. For those who don't know you, uh, what's neat is quick aside, I had an interview earlier, and not like earlier today, but earlier this month, and we were doing the pre-show conversation. I said, so you kind of have a good idea about what we're going to do? And he's like, yeah, I was just watching the podcast with Katrina Kennedy. I got a good idea. So I
Ah,
appreciate that. But for those who don't know you, would you mind telling us your story?
sure. My story is I became an accidental trainer a long time ago. Almost back in the back in the 19th century. Um,
Oh, man. Ah, okay.
um, uh, and back in the 1900s is really what I meant to say. Back in the 1900s, I became a trainer because my manager said I could talk, and so I found myself in learning and development, loved it, and then went out on my own almost 30 years ago, and spend most of my time now training and supporting subject matter experts who are asked to train in their organization. So I do a lot of design support and a lot of facilitation support. And I wrote a book last year, Learning That Lasts, which is 46 reflection activities that people can add to their training.
Now I have a new book to get. Thank you.
You're
Now
welcome.
I have to go out and buy and it's I'll tell you another quick story here. My wife, she texted me, "You bought a book?" And I'm like, she was mad because I'm packing thousands of books up. She's like, "You bought another book?" I was like, "But I didn't have this one." And then I was packing up and I was like, "Oh, wait, I did have this one. I just hadn't, put it in my inventory yet." So, I don't mind buying another book. That one sounds really good. There's always the need to make sure that that training transfers out of the classroom because
Absolutely.
training that isn't delivered I was actually writing about this and researching this the other day. Training that isn't delivered is called scrap learning, or training that is delivered but never used, scrap learning. And there's different perspectives on what percentage that is. I think Brinkerhoff said it was like up to 80%, but there are other studies that show it's around 60%. So that's
Wow.
an important book. That's still 60%. If you were if you were think of it this way, if you were under a budget crunch, and there's a lot of companies these days that are like, "Hey, we're having a hard time. What can we cut?" And they look at learning and development, and they bring you in, and you say, "Yeah, about 60% of what I do is waste."
Right. That would be a great lead in.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
please use me.
It could be
60% doesn't matter.
it could be 80%, but I don't know. 60
Yeah.
to 80% of what I do is waste. Or you can go in and say, "Look, a lot of places, 68 to 80% of what they train is waste. But here's what I do to make sure it's much less than that." And this training department is actually it's not an expense, it's an investment, and you're getting this out of it and can prove it. You've got to have that just for
Absolutely.
your own, CYA positioning.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the book is about reflection, right? And it's these simple reflection activities. It, we think that something has to be really hard to get it to transfer, but it's not like these big expensive things. It's these small changes that we can make in training and outside of training that then ups that 60 to 80, or lessens that 60 to 80, so that we are transferring, so that we are making a difference with the work that we do.
And that's what it's all about. We have a lot of people out there, and I don't know the percentage. I'm saying that, a lot that still have the attitude that I've delivered the training and therefore they've been trained and therefore my job is done. On the flip side of that, the managers say, "Hey, they've been trained. They're not doing it. Clearly the training didn't work." Because
Right.
our job isn't to deliver training, our job is to improve performance.
Right.
We have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we set our organizations up thinking that everything happens in those four walls or on that Zoom screen, and we don't create that through line from what happens before training to what happens after, so that we're really working in partnership with the organization and supporting people. I think it really comes down to that, supporting the manager and supporting the participant, so that they get to practice and they get to be successful outside of the learning event.
You're absolutely right. So tell me, you wrote the book. Is that the end of the story, or is it more to come, more after that?
So I wrote the book last year, and okay, yes, there's more to come. Um,
Always.
always. I may be in the middle right now in this very moment of working on the second book.
Excellent.
Yeah, and the second book is actually, in a way, the book that could have come first, but it's second because I thought of it second. And the second book is really in line with what I'll be doing at Core 4. And at Core 4, ATD's Core 4 in Indianapolis, I'm doing a session on, something's missing from your training and you don't even know what it is. And this is a totally different approach for me. I'm super excited about it. It's a card deck based workshop where people will sort these 16 cards that have questions all about um, elements of training that need to be in place in order to make it effective, and really looking at how we learn, looking at supporting the participants cognitive load, and then through these questions you can identify exactly what you can add to your training to make it more effective.
Well,
So I'm excited about it.
that leads into my question. You kind of already asked it. My next question, so to speak, was tell me about your training is missing this and you don't even know it. So, would you mind? I don't want to give away the whole presentation. I want people to go see you at Core 4, but I'm intrigued by you said there's 16 cards. Would you mind telling us a few of the cards? What are some things that might be missing?
Sure. So one of the cards says very simply, do you include movement? And, it's a yes or no. Do you have people move? And if the answer is no, now we know we need to get people moving. We need to have them stand up. We need to have them move around the room if you're doing it in a physical space, so that, if that's available to people, because we want to keep accessibility in mind, but people need to move to learn. They can't just sit and take in. So that's
Why is
one of
that?
the cards.
Why is that important though? Why is movement important? So important that you'd put it on a card.
It is so important to put on a card because our brain runs on oxygen and we create more oxygen with movement. So if you are sitting stale, if you're just sitting listening, you are losing that opportunity for that oxygen production to your brain. And so you've got to have it in there to grab people's attention, and once you've got their attention, now they can be more engaged. So it's not moving the entire time, it's moving with purpose. It's moving intentionally so that you are getting the most of people's cognitive ability.
That is, I think, one of the things that I think we underestimate. We don't even think about it enough as we should. And David J.P. Phillips has a great TED talk out there, Death by PowerPoint. I don't know if you've ever seen it,
I
but
have.
it's fantastic. And one of the things he talks about in there is why you shouldn't have any more than 5 objects on your slides. And people scoff at that. What? And he explains, look, when you have more than 5, it actually like increases the the power needs in your brain by like 3, 4, 500%. And so as you're adding more to the screen, you're actually taxing the energy that person, that your participant has stored in their body for learning.
Right.
And when you overload that, you're actually doing them a disservice because you're making it harder for them to learn. Now, this idea of you need to get them up so they can I stand. I stand when I do this podcast, and I do that for a reason because sitting, you just kinda collapse everything if you have bad posture, and
Mhm.
after sitting for a while, you're probably gonna have bad posture, let's be honest, and that can close off everything, makes it more difficult, but I love that focus on the physiological part of the participant rather than just the mental.
Yeah. Yeah, it all we are a whole human, and when we take advantage of the whole human, we get a return on that. So one of the categories kind of building on the idea of too much on the PowerPoint, one of the categories is managing cognitive load. And so in that category, I include the principle of, take a break to learn. And so one of the cards is, do you include breaks? And I'm not talking about like, we're going to take a 15 for coffee. It's those brain breaks that we're adding in as well, so that, you are never really talking for more than 10 minutes because you need things to shift if you want to keep people's attention, if you want them to be involved. Uh, Another question in that cognitive category is, are you including reflection before, during, and after your training? Because we need reflection as a brain break, but also reflection works to move us to action. It moves the idea that we're doing in a learning experience into our real world, and we need that. We need that processing time. It's so easy to just dump a lot of information on people, but we need them to be able to stop and process it, do something with it.
So you're using the word reflection, and I'm noticing you're not saying review. And I'm wondering, is that deliberate? And what's the difference? And why is reflection more important than review to you?
So I don't use the word review because oftentimes people think of review as me saying, okay, here were the top 5 things, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. I actually use the word retrieval and reflection. So retrieval is the act of you getting something as the learner out of your head. So I would say to you, what are the 5 things that you can recall from this module or from this day? And you do that active work. And then the next piece of it, review or retrieval and reflection always go together in my mind, or often go together. And then I would say, okay, so what are you going to do? And that's the reflection. Sometimes I think we use reflection, we use the word reflection as just like, oh, I'm going to think about what I did. But for it truly to be reflection, we've got to move it forward. We've got to take the next action. So retrieval, getting it out, reflection, moving it forward. So review, not on my list. I know people use it, but I want something more active, more brain-based, more learner centered so that they're doing the work. And for me as a facilitator, I'm not.
There's a activity that I love that I learned from Bob Pike, and he didn't use review either. He said when you say review, what people hear is, "Oh, he's going to tell us stuff that he's already told us so I can check out."
Right.
And so he's very much in line with what you're saying. And the activity that he used that I use all the time, he called give one, get one. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking of the things that you've said so far, and I'm like, this checks a lot of boxes. This is them doing it. They're going to get up out of their seats. They're going to what I would do, and I just listening to you now, I've just added a new step to it. So thank you for your insights because you've just made this activity better for me. What I would do is I would say at your tables, grab an index card, write down the 3 most important things you've learned today. And then I give them a few minutes to do that. So here's them going through their workbooks or their notes or whatever, and that's an active revisit or an active reflection. Is that right?
I would call it retrieval. I would call that
Retrieval.
that
So
piece retrieval.
that's active retrieval. It's not you telling them, it's them once again going over the content. And then once I see, I say, sometimes I might say, once you have your 3, go ahead and stand up. So then I can look around the room and I can see who's still working, who needs help. Then I get to the movement portion. I say, okay, you've got your 3. I want you to go share your 3 with someone in the room you haven't spoken to much today. You'll share your 3. They will share their 3. And if you hear one from them that you think's important, add it to your list. Once you get to 5, go ahead and sit back down.
Yeah.
So now they're all going around, and that's where I would stop. But listening to you talk about reflection, now I want to add one last bit, and that is look at your 5 and choose one that you're going to use next week and write down
Yes.
how you're going to use it.
There you go. Absolutely. So you have now answered, of the 16 cards, you have said yes to retrieval, reflection, movement, and we could probably add in there changing things to learn as well, which is another one of the cards. So now you've hit 4 spots with one activity that probably takes you less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another part of that too. And I don't know if it's one of the cards. Maybe it is. We should talk about this. But I think it's important that the people in the room get to know one another too. That they're not just sitting in a chair and the interaction is between the participant and the trainer. But it needs to be almost, I don't want to say that you're building community, but you're building a little bit of teams and you're getting to know one another. I sat in a training at the training magazine conference. This was years ago. It was one of the 2-day certifications, and I hadn't been there for 2 days. This was not like day 2. This was early in the afternoon. I had not talked anything but training. Okay, but a lot of people who get to know me, they know I work in politics a lot. I am involved in I had said nothing political at all. This guy turns and looks at me and goes, "Dwayne, anybody ever tell you you're a lot like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec?" And I laughed. I said, "Yeah, I get that a lot. I get that a lot." But that's the type of interaction that they had at the tables just in the morning and early afternoon, that we had gotten to know one another, where we were comfortable and felt safe enough to talk with one another like that. That is important to training too, even if it's nothing about the content. If you can build that, what that gives then, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, the opportunity that if we're back out in the field and I'm struggling with something, I know Katrina was in that training and
Absolutely.
I can call her and say, "Hey, help me out with this because I remember we talked about this, but I'm losing it here on the site. I can't remember what step 7 was or whatever." That's important, right?
Absolutely, and that's actually the very first card is connect to learn, and it's connecting to your own knowledge, but it's also connecting to each other because when we bring people into a space, you're not just helping them learn, you're building a culture in your organization. So I want you to have that comfort with each other. I want you to be able to say, "Hey Katrina, can you help me with this?" You know, when we pass in the hall, I want you to be able to like recognize me and know how I can help. I think we often look at it's easy to look at training as like, okay, this means to an end for performance, but it's also very, very culture building.
What would you say to someone who's looking at that card, connect, and they're like, "Yeah, but all I do is webinars. I can't do that on a webinar."
I would say, like, right up front, you need to find a way to connect people to you and to each other and to the content. So have them contribute something, have them share something, have them in some way in that webinar, they need to connect to you at the minimum in order to truly be invested and feel like that somebody cares about them. And you know, we typically do that in most ways. They, you know, find the pain point. What is it that is hard for you? And in a webinar, there's a great opportunity to just say, like, what brought you here? You know, why are you here? Why'd you show up? And now that I know that, I can come back to it over and over again. It's most of the conference sessions I start, which isn't the same as a webinar, but you know, big group of people, it's hard to connect to everybody. I will almost always start them with the question, why did you choose this room? You know, of all the places, because that tells me what I can provide. You know, I have an idea of what I want to do and a schedule and objectives, but I want to try to match it as much as possible to what brought you.
Yeah, and I think an important my brain's going all over the place, but I think about when I would start webinars, one of the first things I do is I would greet them as they come in, I had a webinar that had like 4 or 500 people in it. That's tough. I mean, people are joining. You're like, "Hey, Katrina. Hey, sorry, it's good to see you. Hey, everybody." And what I'll say is, "Hey, everybody in the chat room. There's hundreds of people there. Put in the chat room where you're from, so we can see who's here." And that's just to get them in the habit of using the chat.
Right.
And then throughout the training, I will say, "In the chat, tell me what you think of this." And they'll
Yeah.
that's one way. Bob would talk about, again, small groups. You can do small
Hmm.
groups in webinars. You wouldn't do 8, but I say you could put 3 to 4 in a room, and you can get connection there, and you
Absolutely.
absolutely should be using that.
Yeah,
But
and if you warn people, tell them up front, there's going to be a breakout room and, you know, people can leave, but the people who are really there to learn will stay. And that I'm thinking about the question in chat, like, where are you from? Because it gets a bad rap. I just saw a post yesterday. Somebody was like, why do we always do this? But in large groups, especially, you can watch what happens. And there's almost always somebody who's like, I grew up there, or oh, I live there too. So you are creating this real connection with a question that seems to be overused, but it's a really safe way to start.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I have a colleague who was very good at this. When we were doing Zoom, she would tell them to put where they're from. She'd say, go ahead and change your name and put where you're from in your name. And that would get
Nice.
them more engaged there. And it goes back to the fact that they have to be engaged. And on webinars, they have to be engaged a lot more than anything than doing it in person. Because I have a screen here and I have a screen here, and it's very easy for me to sit on a webinar and have this camera on and be playing a video game over here. I'm on the
Absolutely.
webinar, but I'm not engaged. I'm
Right.
completely disengaged. So you've got to have that engagement and try and build that connection even online. 16 cards. We've touched what, 4 or 5 of them here.
Yeah.
You're going to be delivering again. The name of the presentation is "Your Training is Missing This, and You Don't Even Know It." This will be at Core 4 in LA or Indianapolis?
Yeah.
Indianapolis, right?
Indianapolis.
Okay.
Indianapolis. Yeah.
All right. Well, Katrina, it's been just a joy to have you on again. And what I'd like is I'd like to give you the opportunity as we close out. If someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, I want to work with her, how do they get a hold of you?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is to head over to katrinakennedy.com, and you can grab 25 creative ways to engage people and get on my newsletter list. I know that was extra, but you can also just send me an email through my website, and happy to support you. Happy to support subject matter experts, trainers, facilitators at any level. It's my favorite thing to do.
It seems that we were destined to end right now because I can hear a 4-year-old trying to get into my office right now. I was
Perfect
like,
timing.
yeah, John apparently needs something right now that he can't get from all of his brothers and his mom in the house. He needs it from me right now. I look forward to meeting you in person. These conversations are always great, and I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for the time that you spent here with me today.
Thank you, Dwayne, and good luck with the move.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got one more interview this week, tomorrow, actually. Hopefully tomorrow. I'm supposed to close on the house that we're moving to on Friday, so can't do any there. But I'm hoping that I get that recorded tomorrow, so that next week I could just focus on packing the other 500 to 600 books that are in this room and moving them all to Iowa. So, thank you.
You're welcome. I
If
hope
you're
you
the
have
praying
help.
type, folks, I could use all the help I can get. Take care, Katrina. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Dwayne.